Hi, everybody. I am Chris Schmidt from Grayscale Gorilla. If you don't know what Grayscale Gorilla is, we make tutorials and we do training and we create tools to help make you a better motion designer. So if you're not super familiar, I also run a live stream that happens every week for many months. We're actually on break right now in between seasons, called Ask GSG. And in Ask GSG, people will come to me with questions from other artists or photos or kind of anything, and we try and recreate it in Cinema 4D. And there's this really kind of cool feedback loop that happened where somebody asked a really complicated question about something in Houdini, and we were able to recreate that effect inside of Cinema 4D. And that effect was seen by David Brodeur. And if you're not familiar with him, he's done like a really amazing series of animations and stills for his Instagram and all that. It's really cool. And he kind of took a technique, a basic thing I did, and then started making it into something incredible. And he made such amazing things that people started asking me questions about how to make what he made. And he started getting more complicated and going deeper. So recently we created a new plugin, or an update to a plugin for Signal 1.5 where he added beats per minute. And I really wanted to tackle some cool animation for that. And I kind of got inspired by his stuff that I want to go tackle it. So I want to show you here that we had some of his infected, or this is some basic stuff that I was creating really quick in 5 minutes when people ask questions. And then he went and started making some incredible things. And here's a little bit of what he had put together. And this is what I start getting questions from people about, like these crazy, weird, like organic, sometimes kind of gross looking things. He's got this whole infected series. And he had told me that he was doing a lot of sculpting along with it. So I thought maybe it'd be fun to dive in and do some sculpting in this process as well. And I actually learned a whole bunch of things about different parts of Cinema 4D that I don't normally spend too much time in. I want to pass that knowledge on to you guys. So we're going to be tackling some modeling, some sculpting, some UV unwrapping, and then we're going to be baking out that texture. We're going to try and put some joints together and weight it up and even clean that and maybe get a tiny little bit of animation going as well as some dynamics. All of that in the next, 45 minutes. So let's see, let's dive right on in. So here we are in Cinema 4D R19. We're going to be doing some modeling. So I'm going to go ahead and create a platonic, and I'm actually going to change it over to one of my favorite shapes, which is a buckyball. I'm going to change my view mode NB so we can see our polygons. I want to smooth that all out. I want to get rid of these and get some n-gons. So I'm going to select everything, and then the shortcut is U-Shift-U is going to pop open untriangulate for us. I'm going to untriangulate. I'll jump that up to 1% so it gets them all smooth. So we've got our individual facets. By the way, I talk really fast, so if I go too fast, just rewatch it later on Cineversity. So anyway, this is going to become, actually, I totally forgot to show the basic animation, so let's show that. So you might have seen this online. I made this for Signal. We'll just show a little part of it in the beginning and the middle. And this is what we're going to try and make, just a little bit of this tree. I'm going to jump here to one of my more favorite parts, right around here. So we want to see about how much of that character we can put together right now, right in front of you. So we're going to start out with this basic shape. That's what we're aiming for. So I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, and I need some more of that geometry. So let's go ahead and click clone. I'm just going to make an absolute copy of that, move that over, and maybe hit T for scale, make it a little smaller off the base one. And I just want to go and put this in the position where it's lining up with an equivalent polygon count. So right there, that's a 5-sided shape. There's a 5-sided one there. That's fine. I need another copy, so let's go ahead and make another clone. And I'm going to move this one over here. I got to hit clone and then hit apply. Clone, and we'll make another clone of that. Let's scoot this one over here. Let's go and give it a little bit of random rotation. Maybe scale that one down a little bit more as well. And let's go ahead and scoot this so that a 6-sided piece is facing another 6-sided piece. And I just want to get a base mesh going, something ready for us to tackle some of the sculpting, which is definitely an area of Cinema 4D that I had not done very much with. So we've got those going. We want a third one, but we don't have a lot of time because we're talking a lot of stuff here. So we're going to go and jump to the next section. We need to connect these together. So I'm going to grab kind of the equivalent polygons that are facing each other. And I'm going to hit B for bridge. So now all we have to do is click on the equivalent point on each of them. Let's drag one to the other. Nice little bridge there. Let's grab one to the other. Got another bridge going. And we could always move these into a new position if we want to get those a little more clean. Let's do that in this one as well. Hit UL, and then UF for fill. Grab that one. Learn your shortcuts, everybody. It speeds up everything so much. So anyway, we got that going. Maybe I want to smooth those out a little bit. So I'm going to go to our loop tool. Actually, I'm going to go to edge mode and hit UB, the shortcut for ring selection. So let's go ahead and grab a ring selection. Ring selection. I want to do an edge cut. Shortcut for that is MF. Now we've got the edge cut going. I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Let's turn off N-gons. Now we got a new line right in the middle of those. I'm going to grab both those loops and let's convert those to points by holding down Shift and clicking points. Now we got those. Now I want to iron them. I really love the ironing tool when you're modeling. So I'm going to hit MG for iron, and let's just click and drag, and it's going to smooth those out. And now we've got a nice little bit more organic looking shape there. Let's jump on to another part here, maybe the base of this, and let's get a little bit of the stem, a little bit of the trunk of this tree. I'm going to grab this middle point. This is kind of in the center. It's a little offset, but it's fine. I'm going to go ahead and grow my selection, UY. And let's go ahead and do an extrusion here. I'm going to hit D for extrude, and I actually want to do an extrusion of 0, because if I pull out right now, it's going to get bigger. I don't want that. So I'm going to hit extrude, and let's go ahead and set the offset to 0 and hit apply. And now I did an extrusion to 0, but it didn't move. But now I can move this straight down, which is what I wanted to do. Now I think I actually want to 0 out our Y height, so it's going to squish that flat. Excellent. And now let's go ahead and grab the middle part, which is the actual trunk of the tree. Hit D for extrude, and I think this time we're safe just dragging it out because we're flat on Y, so I can pull out the trunk a little bit there. Let's pull out another segment for it. Let's drag another segment out for it, and maybe one third one, and we need this one to set up the roots, the little feet of the tree. So I'm going to hit UL, get a loop selection going. Let's hit, I wouldn't say D for extrude, and we could do that, but I'm going to do a bevel instead. So I'm going to hit, what is it, I'm blanking on the shortcut, MS. MS is the shortcut for bevel, so let's go ahead and do that. I want to turn off preserve groups, and now I can do a bevel on every single one of those. And the bevel is kind of like a extrude and an inner extrude at the same time, if you think about it that way. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of a smaller offset here. We want to get the feet getting smaller, and then we want these to push way out. Way more than even that, so let's push those out. So simultaneously, we just did all those. Cool, now I'm going to go to our move tool. Let's move those down a little bit. And we probably want some additional geometry. Something I'm aiming for here is that we want all of our polygons to be approximately the same size. They don't have to be exact, but if they're too big or too small, the sculpting will get more difficult. So now I want to go ahead and grab some of these edges to subdivide those a little bit. So I'm going to hit UB again, which is ring selection. I use often. Let's go and grab all of these loops. MF again. We can get a couple extra subdivisions going. In fact, I'll put in a couple more. Just smooth those out. We can model them a little bit more. Let's do one last part here. Let's get some of those weird little tentacle arms down here. Now, I forget. I don't know the shortcut for this because I was just taught this the other day, but there is Fong selection. I don't even know where it is. So I'm going to do my old, Fong break selection. So it's UN Fong selection. UN. There we go. And look, I can grab that selection very easily right there. I just learned that the other day. And important to learn those shortcuts. So anyway, I want to hit D for extrude, and I don't want to preserve my groups. In fact, I don't want to do D for extrude. I want to do I for inner extrude. Let's do a small inner extrusion here. Don't preserve the groups. Let's go ahead and pull those down. Now let's hit another I for inner extrusion. We'll shrink those in a little bit more. Pull those down some more. And then I'd probably do one last one just to round those out a bit, and we'll pull those down. Now, once again, we can use that ironing tool that I love so much, and I can grab something like that, and let's grab maybe that loop and that loop and that loop. And I'm going to hit MG for iron again, and as I pull this, you're going to see all those are going to get a little bit more organic. They're blending between each other, just make everything look a little bit more organic. And we could even select everything, hit MG, and get a little bit of an organic thing going, smooth them all out. But I'm going to leave it there. And now one other thing that's going to be important is grabbing the main selection. The main work we're going to be doing on this is going to be on these big orbs. So I actually want to make sure I get those all selected. So I'm grabbing everything that isn't the orb, because that's easier. Now I can hit UF, fill this bottom, and then hit UI, invert, and now I've got the orbs. So a really quick way of grabbing those. And I just want to go and create a selection tag so that those are stored so I can go and grab them later. But that is pretty much all the basic modeling that we need to do here. Now I'm going to go ahead and pop open a model I already prepared here, so you can see it's a little bit more on the final tree. It's exactly what we just put together, but I have that third orb that we didn't have time to put together. If I do this, I did forget to mention one thing, which is I grabbed all of those selections. I did a couple inner extrudes to pull in these different angles. So anyway, now we are ready to dive in and start doing a little bit of sculpting. Now, I had done almost no sculpting, but the idea here is I want you guys to be able to walk away and use these tools, and they can get complicated, but there's a very simple way of using a lot of them. So let's go ahead and change to our sculpt layout. And we're going to be almost exclusively using our pull tool. So let's go make sure I'm on our model. Let's grab that. And all we need to do is prepare it. So I'm going to create a subdivide. And the subdivide is just going to throw on a sculpting tag on top of our object. And now every time I hit subdivide, it's going to smooth it out one time. It's like, increasing the subdivisions in a subdivision surface. So I'm actually going to do that a few times. And I'm going to give us a fairly dense mesh here. So you see we've got tons of polygons, and there's a bunch of nuance where you could go to different layers and create layers within them and subdivide differently, but we're going to do this in the simplest possible way. So you can see I've got lots of polygons here. So let's go ahead and just start doing some sculpting. So let's change our view mode back to something clean, and A, shortcut there. And if you click your middle mouse button, we can, there's two settings here, pressure and size and pressure that we want to be manipulating. But it's a little bit of a pain to come over here and drag those up and down. So instead, we can just click the middle mouse button and drag to the right, and I make it larger or smaller. If we click the middle mouse button and drag up and down, we can increase or decrease the pressure. So let's go ahead and make our default brush here maybe a little bit smaller, because I want to start painting in some kind of gross little veiny vines that interconnect these orbs. So you can see if I drag around right now, I'm getting just some nice basic sculpting thrown right onto the surface. So we're just going to focus on a relatively small area. Why don't we do this one? So I'm just going to very kind of roughly paint in one vein. Now let's paint in a couple of these. So let's go and grab another one, pull it up to there. Let's pull this one around. And I just want to get a nice organic vibe. And you can see I can see my shape here, so I'm avoiding those circles when I'm drawing these out. Pull one out there. Let's go down here. Maybe draw one more. I'm just letting these travel around, having some fun on the overall shapes. So you can do a little bit of a Bob Ross thing here. Let's paint some happy little veins here, pull these out, get some more gross plant things going on. So we can do something like that, and that's kind of the way I like thinking about some of the sculpting is you start with your big passes, and you zoom in and get smaller and more detailed and more detailed. So let's go ahead, that's a fine base there, and what I might do would be even take the same brush, and let's make it a little bit bigger and maybe a little more powerful. And maybe we can get a little bit of detail here in the trunk. So I can go and I can paint down, and I'll just go along the foot, and let's rotate again. Let's just paint again. I'm intentionally putting some imperfections in there. By the way, if you have a Wacom tablet, this would probably be even better, and it would be pressure sensitive. But even in my final, I just used a mouse, and it worked pretty amazingly. So now I'm just going through, and you can see I'm just adding in some of this detail very quickly. It's not taking very much time at all. And just looking at this trunk, when I spin around, like, look how much more personality is automatically in that. And I spent very little time doing it. Now, these all look a little bit rough. So I want to smooth those out a little bit. So let's go ahead and grab the smooth tool. Now, I heard I can click on Shift, and if I hold down Shift, I can just automatically go to Smooth tool. But just to be clear about what we're doing, I'm going to click on Smooth right there, and now we've changed over to another tool, which is just smoothing. So if I were to make that maybe a little bit bigger, if I were to click around here, you can see I'm kind of erasing it out, but it's not so much erasing, it's just blending it in with its surroundings. What I want to do is just blend some of these little veins out a little bit, make them fade into the rest of the model a little bit more. And kind of anywhere that's a little bit messed up, we can fade them out. So something like this connection, that looks a little clunky there, but if we start smoothing it out, they all just kind of blend together, and it works, like it automatically starts working really well. We can do some nice smooth passes on there. Connect that stuff up. Cool. So we've got those. That pass is looking all right now. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks pretty good, and it was really quick to put together. Now we're just going to focus on this area, and then we'll kind of pull up another one where I've done this exact same process on the entire thing. But all the techniques I use, I'm showing you right here. So now I've done that. Why don't we go back to our pull tool, and let's go ahead and shrink that way up. And I want to get smaller and have less pressure than I was using on those other parts. And let's go in and add in the next layer of detail. Let's just have some other little tentacle arms come out here. Keep these veins continuing. And we'll just do some more right there. Maybe a little bit more going this direction. So, and even here, I'm going to zoom in and just kind of start focusing on just this part. We don't need to go worry about the rest of the model, because you don't need to see me do the same thing over and over again. I will say, though, like, sculpting is pretty fun. Like, you can get obsessive over getting little details in and just layering this stuff up. It goes on for so long. But anyway, I've got, let's say that's the next pass. The next layer of veins has been set up. So we can go back to the smooth tool, and I can do the exact same process again. Let's smooth out those ends so they kind of blend in a little bit more of the model. Maybe some of those connection points, blend those in. Very nice. Love it. All right. So now I would, on my main model, I did do a third pass on that. We'll do that very quickly, where I'm going to, once again, less pressure. Once again, smaller. And oops, Let's go ahead and zoom in. And here, like, we can do these final little tentacle arms shooting out. But I also, what's kind of fun is going back over the other part so we can see this layer up, make it even grosser. A little imperfection in there actually, I think, helps. But yeah, layering these up really, really kind of just sprinkling them throughout. I'm not even doing anything special here, and this is all stuff I seriously made up for this project, and I had no idea what I was doing. So just layering that up, you can already see we get all this detail, and I don't even feel like I have to blend this one in that much, but it's working really nicely. Now, there are two other kind of main techniques I want to talk about inside of sculpting that I thought were kind of fun. One was I wanted to make these gross little pustule, little like berry things growing on there. For that, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Let's make that a little bit stronger. And let's just find a nice open area. Maybe something like here. So I'm going to just pull out some tiny little sections on that. And we can even maybe make a bigger one right there. Make a little baby one over here. Cool. And now we're going to go to just our third sculpting tool, which is going to be inflate. Inflate's a lot like pull, but it pulls out in addition. It's kind of like ballooning something out. So I got these little bumps that I have that I can work off of, so let's make that a little smaller. And I'm just going to click and drag out a little bit, and you're going to see we're going to get this really nice inflation going right there. And I think especially like adding onto this type of organic thing, like those just automatically make it look so gross. That's great. Like, look at those. Just pull those out from the mesh. We can see our overall mesh here. You can see how those are inflating. And at any point, if I went too far, if I messed those up, we can go back to our smooth tool. And I'd be like, okay, you know what? Like, back it up a little bit there, guys. Like, a little too powerful. So layering that stuff up is super fun. Now, let's go talk about the last main thing I want to talk about in the sculpting portion here. And that is using stencil. Now, I'm in the pull tool, and there's something called stamp, and there's something called stencil. They're very similar, but I think I might actually prefer stencil. So that's what I'm going to talk about. Let's go ahead and we've got our pull tool. I'm going to go ahead and make it bigger. Let's go ahead and make it a little more powerful, bigger still. And we want to go and feed in some sort of image. You could get an image off the internet, grab some sort of texture, make something in Photoshop. But what's even better, and what I really like doing, is making my own material and feeding that in. So I'm going to go over to this material manager. I kind of want it where I'm used to it being, so I'm going to drag it over there. Let's go ahead and make ourselves a nice new material. And in that material, I am going to just go to the color channel and let's make a noise. You guys know how much I love these parametric noises. So let's go ahead and make it into something a little bit more organic. I like Naki is great for that kind of stuff. Let's go ahead and pull up this contrast. I want to see some whites. I want to see some blacks in there. We don't want to overdo it, but there we go. It looks pretty good. Now we've got that material. Let's go back into our pull tool. And all I have to do is drag this material I created into this material window, and boom, you're going to see it up here in your viewport. This is already a little bigger because I dragged it earlier, but usually it comes in a little bit small. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up to be a little bit bigger in the viewport. We can go and change our transparency so it's really thick or really thin. Just that little hint of it there, though, is working great. That's all we did. We just added in a noise into that channel, and now I can go and zoom in on any part of this model I want and sculpt in that noise detail exactly where we want. So any imperfections that I might have had in any of those other areas are just instantly getting like blended in, and we're getting all this like really fun additional detail. And if at any point, I mean, first of all, like this is working so well, I'm just rotating around, and whatever I'm looking at, that's what gets projected on. So that is fun. And if I just keep making sure I rotate my camera around a little bit, make sure I'm grabbing some slightly different areas, like we shouldn't ever see any repetition. I think it'd be like impossible to find repetition in here. And I mean, along those lines, we could probably just go and make this brush quite large, zoom out, and get some larger areas at any given time, really blend those all in simultaneously. So, like, it's so much fun to add those details in. And it's whatever noise I want to make. So we can go and change it to Naki or a Perlin noise or any of the other shapes in there. It just works instantly and so much fun. You see how that's just instantly blending in, and we've got this really awesome gross shape. You can't see what was underneath it at all anymore. And along those lines, I just want to show that we can add additional detail, and where this is just super flexible is we can jump into that noise, and let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller and then stretch it up really tall. So I'm going to go up to 1,000, stretch that out. And now you can see it's been stretched out on my screen. Let's go ahead and pull back on this brush a little bit. And now on the trunk of this tree, I can go and start painting in some additional vertical lines. So I don't have to go find textures online. I can just use all these built-in Cinema 4D noises and get the detail instantly on whatever I want that to look like. And it's just so quick to throw this together. Painting that everywhere. And I mean, you could, this shape we could be painting up onto the main part of the mesh, so we get these vertical lines going if we wanted to. Go down to these roots, go down to the feet here, and I can paint those in as well. And man, it's just so much fun. Like I said, like we could go and spend this entire time just doing some sculpting and some detailing. But I think that's going to have to cover the basics of this. The point here being is don't be afraid to dive in and start playing around with that sculpting. So let's jump into, actually I'm going to go ahead and open up a file here. And this is all the stuff I just talked about, but I have now done it to the entire tree. And on this, I mean, it'll take a couple hours maybe to get really detailed in there, but there it is. It's all projected. We've got all the veins painted in. We've got all the detail painted on, the vertical lines. That is ready to rock. But let's go ahead and take a look at our poly count. There are a lot of subdivisions here. I want to animate this. I want this to be a character. And if we're going to be doing some weight painting and whatnot, this is too many polygons to deal with. We don't want to deal with that many. So we need to bake this down. Now, there's a very nice baking tool in Sculpting. And I got to make sure I have it selected. Let's go ahead and grab that. And we can go into our Sculpt. And then there's a baking tool right here. But we need good UVs, or it doesn't know where to bake. It doesn't know where to put these textures. So we need to get our UVs working. And I think UVs are an area where a lot of people are super intimidated and they don't know what to do. I want to show you a super straightforward way of getting some very reasonable UVs very quickly. I think this would work in like 90% of circumstances. You wouldn't even have to think about it. So let's see how quickly we can throw this together. So we've got our big dense mesh here. Let's go ahead and work on our UVs right away. Let's go and change our, actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm skipping a step. We need to select some edges. So you can see that if we go to edge mode or point or any of them, we're back into our nice low poly mesh, but we can't rig up that sculpted object. So now we need to go and essentially slice this up. So the way I like thinking about it is imagine if this is like a stuffed animal, like a teddy bear or something. I want to go and trace lines around where the seams would be. Like if you were to kind of turn this into a two-dimensional shape, which is what UV unwrapping is doing, it's a three-dimensional shape put on a 2D plane. Think of this like a teddy bear. Where do we want the cuts to be? Where should the fabric be? So I'm thinking that we would kind of, on these orbs, that we want to just cut them in half. There'd be two pieces of fabric, one on one side, one on the other. It's kind of like to get rounded out and connected. So along those lines, we've now got our edge tool. Actually, you know, before we do that, why don't we go and do some loops? So we just want to make some cuts. Imagine every loop I'm doing is you would take like a knife or scissors and cut the fabric along those lines. So let's go and grab some loops. I want to grab maybe this loop right there. And because I want to just cut that section off, and then we would grab, maybe down here, we'd grab these loops of feet. I want all the feet to be disconnected entirely, so I can grab those loops. I'm not going to grab all of them because I've already got a prepared one here. You can see I can very carefully grab these edges and grab what I want. A little fiddly right there, trying to grab that edge. So we got that, but now I'm going to use, and you'd also probably want to grab in this model that loop right there. But now, where was an additional cuts we want? Like this tube, the cylinder, the trunk of the tree running up. We need a slice along that. So let's hit the shortcut UM, and that is the path selection tool. So let's go ahead and start making some additional cuts. I'm going to hold down Shift so it adds to my selection, and I am now going to select that path right there. That can be an incision. That's going to cut right along the fabric. Let's go ahead and the feet. We should also probably do a slice along there so that piece of fabric could unroll and then be flat. And then on each of these tentacle arms, I would probably, honestly, I'd probably want to go and do a full outline on them like that. And then we could do one cut along the edge here. The angle gets a little funky. But let's go ahead and see if we can grab something like that. So we get a nice little edge. So that, once again, can disconnect and get unwrapped. So think about it like that, like pieces of fabric. And then these orbs, obviously, are a big, complicated part. I'd probably want to do some loops here, just disconnect them entirely. We don't need those to be connected. And then let's hit UM again to get our path. And let's see, how would we cut this in half? Well, pretty straightforward. Let's just go and start drawing a rough line. Gotta get the angle right. Didn't do that one quite right. Head up here, head over there. And we're just going to carefully add onto that selection. I'm a little off there. I'd want to hit that more perfectly, but we got lots of cover, so I'm just going to keep going. Backtrack there, finish that cut out. And it's not, you see, I'm not even being perfect there. I'm allowing this to go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. Just kind of generally cutting this thing in half because it doesn't have to be perfectly in half. So there we go. That becomes that orb cut in half. And even like this big middle one, we would just make sure that this connects over to there, over to there. So we just go and do that for all the orbs. Now I have already prepared the selection, so I'm just going to go ahead and double click that selection. And you see I've done that same thing. Everything I just talked about, every one of the orbs is cut in half. These are sliced down their sides. Everything is ready to rock. So let's go ahead and work on our UVs. I'm going to jump into the body paint UV edit layout. Click on that. A couple tools that we need here. Now, first of all, here's our tree. I need to drag in our current UV. So that's this tag. Every polygon object should probably have one. If not, you can just make a blank one. But they're going to be kind of ugly UVs. So let's go and drag that in. And you can see that. And if I go and select our polygon mode and select it, there's all of our polygons. And there's just a big grid that's overlaying everything. So that's not useful. We couldn't bake onto that. We couldn't paint onto that. So how do we go and get this to very simply become something that is usable? Well, we are going to jump into projection. Actually, we've got our UV mapping right here, and everything we do is just going to be right in this menu. So we got a couple different modes here we're going to jump to, but we're going to start out with projection. We need this to be something reasonable looking. So you can do flat, but I think I prefer frontal. I'm going to click on frontal, and all that has happened is this shape that we're looking at has been projected onto this flat 2D canvas. So now that we've done that, all of our polygons are kind of properly connected to their neighbors the way we want them to be. So what we can do now is jump over to Relax UV. So these defaults are being remembered. So normally, pin border points would be on. We actually want to turn that off. We want these free to move around. And then we want to cut our edges. So we're just going to click Cut Selected Edges. Now you can even do a thing where you pin them down with points, but we're not even worried about that part. Now there's two different algorithms. There's ABF and there's LSCM. LSCM is more modern, but I just try both of them to see which one I like the look of better. So now just remember these cuts that we have right here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit, I think we have to be on the polygons. I'm going to go ahead and hit Apply. And all the cuts that we made have now separated out and distributed themselves on this canvas, and they're trying to maximize their space, and they're all laid out. Boom. We just unwrapped our UVs. Now, if we want to, we could even hit that button a few times. Usually it recalculates. It does a little differently. We can also try our other algorithm, ABF, hit Apply. And you can see it's going to do a slightly different job of it. Just look at it, see which one looks better, which one's eating up the space better. As a general rule, you want your polygons to kind of relative to each other look about the same that they did on the model. Now, you will see that there can be some wasted space. There's open spaces in all these different areas. We can maybe fix that a little bit automatically. If we didn't have a lot of time, we can jump into our optimal mapping, and I'm going to turn on realign, and then we can even change our spacing is usually at 2%, but I'm going to set that really tiny, like 0.1. We hit Apply, and it's going to just try and rearrange them, optimize the space a little bit better, just eat up that space. Now, if you want to take time, you could go and grab these and scale them and really fiddle with it. But you know what? Like, we don't have time for that. We got to keep moving forward. I think that this UV unwrapping, you are now ready to do body paint. You are now ready to bake a sculpt. Like, that's all you really have to think about. So just draw your edges and then automatically unwrap it using the Relax UV. So cool. We've got our UVs now. So now we can jump back to our startup layout, and let's go ahead and get this thing baked. I'm going to click on Sculpt, and let's click on Bake Sculpt Objects. And if I click back on my normal model mode, you'll see that we still have all the detail there. But now we have good UVs. So now let's go ahead and set this up. I want to bake out two different passes here. So we've already got this set up here, but let's go ahead and save it. I'm going to jump into our current presentation folder, and let's just go ahead and make a Live 2 folder. And the first thing I'm going to bake out is going to be our displacement RGB. So I did not even know Cinema 4D did this until I worked on this project. But right now we're going to be baking out to a TIFF, 32 bits per channel, and we can set the resolution. I'm going to leave it at 2000 because we're doing this live. That's all ready to go, and we can jump to options. What do I want to be baking out? I want to bake out our displacement map. Cool. What level? We have got 4 sculpting levels. I'm going to say I want our deepest, most detailed level to be baked down to level 0, the lowest level. Cool. Those are already set. Jump to settings, and by default, it's a method of RGB. I didn't even know you could feed color images into the displacement channel, but apparently you can, and this is automatically going to prepare it for us. So now we can hit Bake, and let's give that a second. And now that we have nice UVs, look at how quickly that baked the entire thing, and it's now created this image for us. Not only has it created that image for us, it's created a new material, and in this new material, it's created the displacement. It's automatically set the height to the height of the sculpted object. It's automatically added in that brand new object. It's automatically set to RGB. It's got sub-poly displacement set to 4 levels, just like our sculpt levels. And it's applied it to a copy, a simplified copy of the object. So I can hide this original mesh that we were working from. And look, we're back to our original model. But this original model has this new material applied to it. And when I hit render, we are getting a sub-poly displacement back to exactly the thing we sculpted. But now we have super low polygon object that we can continue working on for texturing and rigging. So in addition to that, we could jump into body paint and start doing some painting on that. But like I said, I was doing a quick turnaround on this project because we are launching Signal 1.5. So I just want to kind of get an outline of all of those veins that I drew onto there. All the gotta stop doing that. All of the detail that we've got painted on here. So what I'm going to do right now is just do a little trick, or I'm going to rebake the displacement, but this time I'm going to bake it using intensity. So we're going to get a black and white matte out of this. So let's go ahead and change it to intensity. Oop, I got to also make sure I'm selected on it so I don't mess that up. So we've got our intensity. Let's go ahead and change that to, intensity there. We're going to make sure it's still displacement. Let's go ahead and just give this another name. So instead of being displacement RGB, let's go ahead and set it to displacement black and white. And now I can just hit bake again. And now it's baking the entire process again, doing the exact same thing, bakes it out, boom, black and white map on that. It did the same thing in material. That could be ready to do exactly what we wanted to do. But instead, I'm actually going to jump into this new material, and I'm just going to go into our displacement channel and copy it. That's all I really wanted from that. So I'm going to copy this black and white image out. And now I don't even need that material anymore, so we can go into this new one, or go into our main one, rather. Let's double-click on that. And I'm going to paste that into our luminance channel. And I'm also going to set the luminance channel to multiply, and we're going to make that extra bright with like a 200%. And I'm going to pull this up to something, let's get some color in there. So now we're multiplying that color on top of like kind of this neon blue. And we can go to our color channel and do something funky. We'll make it like a deep purple. And that is that material. It's already applied to this shape. I can actually delete out that baked object we just made. Let's delete our original model. You probably want to save that separately, but let's delete that original model. Now all we got is this low poly model. We've got that material where I just copied those two different displacements in, threw in some quick texture tricks. Let's go ahead and hit render. And now we've got this detailed tree with textures just applied to where those veins were. Anywhere that pushed out is now got that depth matte applied to it. So much fun. And I mean, there's so many things that we can continue here. You could jump into body paint and do some additional detail, but I want to show you one little trick that I like doing, which is painting in some extra detail just using vertex maps. So let's say that we want the trunk of the tree not to get the glowy parts, or not as much anyway. So let's go ahead and just do a quick loop selection there. UF, do a fill selection. I'm going to convert that to points. Now we've got those points selected. Let's set a vertex weight. Set vertex weight, 100%. Boom. That is now smoothed out. We could even double click on it. And right now, we can change the mode. It automatically popped open the paint tool when you double-click it, so that's very useful. I'm going to change our mode from absolute just to smooth. I'm going to say apply all, and look, every time I click, it's smoothing out that vertex map. So now we can use this vertex map as like an alpha channel or as some sort of mask. So we can jump into our texture that we've got. Let's jump into our luminance channel, and I'm going to put this entire thing into a layer shader, my favorite shader. And inside here, we're just going to make a vertex map. So let's go to Effects, and we're going to go to Vertex Map. So we got our vertex map. Let's drag in that new vertex map that we made. I'm just going to hit Render right now so we can see what it's doing directly. So you can see that the trunk is super glowy. It's 100% mask. So let's go ahead and just say, you know what? I actually want you to multiply on top of the other layer where you're feeding it. Let's hit Render. And you can see that now the base is all glowy, but not the top. We want the opposite. So we can just jump to that vertex map and say Invert. And now hit render. And now the trunk is fading out the glow, and the top has got maximum glow. So just cool tricks we can use the vertex map to be like, you know what, the orbs I want to look a particular color, and this section I want to be this other color. We didn't even jump in the body paint, as fun as it is. So yeah, that is all working really well. Now, that's as far as we're going to go with this texturing part. There's a lot more I'd like to talk about, but we've only got about 15 minutes left here. So we're going to jump in to try and do a little bit of rigging. I think a lot of people get intimidated by rigging, especially the weight painting part of that. So let's see if we can, in the same way we made UV unwrapping simple, let's see if we can do that with some of these weights and joints. So let's do the simplest form of this possible. And it's actually the way I really did it. We're going to go into the character menu, and I'm just going to create a single joint here. Let's pull it down. I want to make sure it's kind of right here in the bottom base of the tree. It's not quite centered. And I'm going to rotate it upward, just so it's pointing forward. Z is always forward in Cinema 4D. So cool. We got a joint. It's not looking like much right now. But if we copy it as a child of itself, I'm even going to turn on our polygon so we can see it. I can now hit E for move, and let's just move this up to about that first subdivision on the tree. Let's go ahead and make another copy of it. And I'm going to drag that up. I'm going to make that copy right there. Let's make one more. Just kind of approximately putting these where that geometry kind of looks like it is where it should be. Let's pull this one up a little bit into the tree. Grab this one. I'm going to pull it up to about the halfway point, and we'll grab this last one, and we're just going to drag it up towards the top. So that becomes kind of just a really straightforward joint chain, just traveling straight down the line. Now let's go ahead and hide our mesh for a second, and let's talk about really the only rigging tool that we're going to be using, which is going to be right-click, character tags, and we're going to add on a IK tag. IK tags are really straightforward. By the way, I'm specifically talking about this part because I think when people do character animation and a lot of different animation, you automatically go for the bend deformer. Joints are not that complicated, and I want you to see how quickly we can throw some of the stuff together so that you don't always, if you're animating a character, you should never be animating the character with a bend deformer. Joints are like pretty much just as fast, and you get so much more control. So anyway, we just threw on this IK tag. All we have to do, very simple series of settings, I'm going to grab the end of the joint chain and drag it into end so it knows where to stop calculating this. Now, we're going to jump into dynamics, and I'm just going to turn on those dynamics. And these are usually not expanded. So I'd probably want to make it maybe like a little bit stiffer and maybe add a little bit of drag in there. And just turning on that checkbox and setting that end joint, I can go ahead and hit play. And if I wiggle this around, we've now got that wiggling in the viewport. Any animation we do, that's automatically going to propagate throughout the entire system. Now, another thing I usually do is go into advanced and turn off continuous update because otherwise it can like refresh when you're dragging your camera and whatnot. I don't like that. But you can see I've now made this dynamic joint chain. Now let's go ahead and unhide our model. And I'm going to hit undo until I kind of get that back in the beginning. So that is pretty much the rigging that I'm going to be doing. I just wanted that little straight joint chain setup. But I want to do that technique over and over again in a whole bunch of different parts of this tree. So what I'm going to do is grab that one, copy it, paste it, and there's a thing you got to do just because of the dynamics will refresh a little bit oddly. So I'm actually going to break the joint chain by deleting out the end. So now it doesn't know where it's calculating to, but that means I can now freely move this anywhere I want to. So I'm going to move it up to about that point. I'm going to rotate it over. We're going to move it to pretty much right there. And I don't even need a couple of these end ones because they're a little bit long, so that looks pretty good. And I'm even fine with overshooting it. The auto weight looks a little better with overshooting. You wouldn't have to, but now all I have to do is reconnect this to the end, and now that is rigged up in the same way the other one was. But all we have to do now is I want this to be a child of the trunk. So we just find the appropriate spot, and for this one, maybe not the end, maybe not the tip, maybe this one right there. I want it to be a child of that. So I'm even going to call this one, it's not the end, but I'm going to call it end. And let's go ahead and grab this one. We could even call that like one of the arms or branch. And I did forget to turn off continuous update on that one, so you can see how it's slouching down. That's what the continuous update is doing, so that's why I like getting rid of that. So now it's straight again. If I'm going to grab this arm, drop it as a child of end, and now we have two effectively unrelated IK joint chains. But the second one has to go wherever the first one goes. So that means if I hit play, I can go and grab the base here and wiggle this around. Oop, let's go ahead and make sure I'm on the move tool. And now I can wiggle this around, and whatever this trunk is doing, it's propagating to this arm. Whatever the arm does, the base doesn't care about it, but it's propagating through that. So we're going to, once again, kind of pull out the pre-cooked one out of the oven, because I'm going to do this process over and over and over again, where one of those joint chains is copied up to this arm, and one is copied to this arm, and then one is copied out to each of these feet, and one is going on each of these little tentacles. But it's this exact same process, a very simple IK joint chain, and then just put in the hierarchy wherever it looks like it should belong. So let's go ahead and pop that one open. Boom. So exact same setup. It's all just set up right there. And we are ready to start trying to tackle some of the automatic joint weighting in here, and then do a little cleanup on it. So what do we got? We got all these joints, and they're all lined up. It's a little bit cleaner, too, where I've got a couple nulls so that like all the feet are in one null, and everything's in the proper spot in the hierarchy. Now, there's something called bind, and it does 99% of the work for us. And all we need to do is go select every single joint that we want to be part of this. So let's go from the top, hold down shift, go to the bottom, grab that one. I got to make sure I deselect some of these nulls. So I don't want that null, and I don't want that null. So now we've got every joint selected. And now let's go to our original mesh, and I'm going to hold down Control, and select that as well. So cool, now we've got those selected. Let's go ahead and click on Character, Commands, Bind. I have now bound all these joints to the mesh. It has automatically created a weight tag for us. It has automatically created a skin deformer for us. We can ignore all this other stuff. It's just to make the textures look nice. So cool, we've got that all built. And actually, let's go ahead and just give this a quick, go ahead and save it. And let's wiggle this around a little bit and see what that looks like. So I'm going to hit play. It's just kind of there. It settles a little bit, and let's turn that off. I'm just going to grab in the screen. I'm going to move this around, and look, even by default, that tree has done a really good job. The bind has done a really good job of binding the weights to the entire mesh. But there's actually a couple of little problems here. If you look maybe closely right there, as I wiggle this around, you see how it's kind of like lagging behind? It doesn't seem to be responding with the rest of it. The weights, what's trying to happen is the auto weighting is trying to bind the mesh to whatever joint is nearest to it. But this section is closer to these tentacles than its base. So we need to clean that up a little bit. And that's where a lot of the joint stuff and the weighting can get confusing. But let's try and do a simplified version of that as well. Let's go ahead and click on our original mesh, and if we double-click on the joint tag, or I'm sorry, on the weight tag, it's going to show us exactly how everything's mapped, and right away we can see where the problem's happening. This is all supposed to be blue, but it's taking on some of the purple of this tentacle, so we need to get rid of that. So let's do the simplified version of this. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Character Manager Weight Manager, because it's got a command we really need to use. Let's go ahead and go to Polygon mode and just select the entire section that we're having a problem with. So I'm going to go ahead and do a loop selection right there, and I'm going to hit U, F, and fill that in. So I've got all those polygons selected. This is what we want to affect. Now what is happening is this joint is being applied over there, and that's one of the tentacles. So what I'm going to do is just select all of the tentacle joints. Let's go ahead and scroll down through all the different joints that have been bound. We're going to grab tentacles, and we're going to go to the bottom. We're going to grab the final one. So those are all those. And I don't want these to have any effect on that, is what we're going for. So I've made this very simple selection in the viewport. All I have to do now is, under our commands, we have, I'm going to change the mode to make sure that we're on absolute. And I'm going to say I want there to be an absolute 0 effect of the currently selected joints, which we already selected, applied to the selected. So I'm going to go and click on there, and I didn't get one of the points, but we've erased out all of the weights on that one. And another important thing to do is click on normalize. And now that we've normalized, all the weights on that have been removed from here. And this one has been re-normalized so that the slight weight that these other joints have been applying to it has been erased. So we can erase out those sections very simply from any given section. Wherever it's not working, we can blend those out. Now, in addition to blending, I probably shouldn't have been editing that when it was at a moved position, but there's another tool that I really like using. And you can see when we grab all of the joints, let's go ahead and just grab it and hit Command A. Oop, that doesn't work apparently. We got to click on this and just scroll, and I'm going to grab every single joint. You can see we got the entire rainbow tree here. But you can see some of these transitions are a little bit rough looking. They're, it's kind of harshly going from red to the blue to the green. So another one of these commands I really love is just the smooth. So I'm going to smooth this 100%. And we'll zoom out. And I'm just going to hit Apply All. I want to smooth all these out. So that's once. I'm going to click twice. And just by clicking Smooth 2 times, look at how much more smooth that is blending between all of these different pieces. So now I can go back to, let's close that out. We don't need that selected. We've got our rig. I can even hide that rig. We don't need to see it. And now if I go and hit play again and I start wiggling this around, everything is so much smoother. We have just now bound all those joints to this mesh using bind and just erasing out that one little area that wasn't working for us. And now they are all combined. So I'm not sure exactly where I'm at with time, but I want to throw on Signal on here. This entire thing got created because we were working on Signal. And if you guys aren't familiar with Signal, it's a procedural animation tool that you can drive any parameter that you can animate, you can drive with Signal. And it's really fun. And we just had a big free update to it where we added beats per minute. So we'd want something to like be dancing to a song. So let's go ahead, and this null right here is right at the trunk of the tree. It's not the feet, but it's everything else but that. And I want to control that with Signal. So I'm going to go ahead and right click. I'm going to add a Signal tag, and we are going to, what do we want to control? I want to control the rotation. So I'm going to grab all 3 axes, the vector, and drop that directly in the Signal tag, and Signal is now controlling those parameters. So we don't have time to go into lots of detail on Signal, but I want, right now there's no animation at all, and I'm going to add a modifier. What do I want to add? I want to add some random noise on here. Also, my one-sentence elevator pitch for Signal is, it's kind of like the vibrate tag for every parameter, but it also does so much more on top of that. So we have now added random rotation to this axis, so we can jump over to the noise tab, and we have our X, Y, and Z. So let's go ahead and jump that to like 65, 65, maybe 25 on the Z, and I can just go ahead and hit play. And this is now randomly rotating it within those variables. You can even see here some real-time feedback on exactly how it's feeding X, Y, and Z in. So that's working well, and that's something that's been in Signal for a while. But we want this thing to be dancing to the beat of a song. And it'd probably even be a good idea to load in some sort of song. We'll see if this works. I'm going to go to the effector, and a very quick way of getting sound in the cinema is just loading up the sound effector. We go to the effector tab, and I'm going to go ahead and find a sound track, which, where do I hit? Yeah, load sound. And let's go back into the presentation and find the song that I did and do the animation for on this. Open that up, and if I hit play, hopefully we will hear it. Yep. Cool. So we're going to be hearing that. I got to be careful about it being too loud. So that can be a pretty low volume on that. But let's go ahead and set this up to animate to the beat. So I'm actually going to tell this not to animate. I'm going to say I want to time remap it, and I want to drive it via something else. So I'm going to add in a beats per minute signal tag. So I'm going to create that. What do I want to control with this new tag? I want to control how the noise is moving forward. So I'm going to grab our time remap, drop it on there. So the brand new signal tag, driving a new parameter. Instead of rotation, this time we're driving the strength of the noise effectively. So I want to add in a new beats per minute. So inside of beats per minute, there's a lot of different features, but all I have to do is type in the current beats per minute from the song, which I've already figured out is 130. There's like lots of online tools to figure that out. So now that's going to be hitting on quarter notes based on 130 beats per minute. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm immediately going to jump to my final settings, which is I want it to be an additive process, to be going forward and hitting additively on time with a variation of 5. So it's going to be moving forward in kind of increments of 5 units, and it's going to be additive, so we need to say this goes up and stays up. So we'll just have that fade out a little bit like that. And now that should be driving our noise. So you see our noise is 0, and as soon as I hit play, this number is going to automatically start animating up by units of 5. So let's go ahead and hit play and give that a listen. A little quiet there, but you see this is jumping up 5 units every time, and it's hitting right on the beat on the music. So we can go and change the speed of this. We can say, okay, I want it to hit harder and move faster, and we're getting all this really nice overlap, all this jiggle, all that we got pretty much for free automatically in the IK tag. We're driving that just with signal, and that rig is just like set up really well for that to be able to animate through. Now, there's one last bit I want to talk about unrelated to signal. I want to talk about setting up the hair on here. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this open. I think the hair's already on it, but let's delete that. So here's that model all set up. And if you remember in the final animation here, there's this part where these seeds, these spores kind of grow off of the tree. And then kind of right here in the key moment, they all burst off there. So let's see if we can kind of whip that out as quickly as possible. So we've got our overall shape here. I'll turn off our subdivision surface. I want to grab all of those points. Now remember, we've got that one selection tag that we had originally created. I can actually grab all those points pretty simply by growing my selection, doing a loop selection right down there. Let's go ahead and hit UF, fill this. And if I hold down Shift, I can convert these all to points. If I invert my selection, you can now see I've got 1 point selected in between every single one of those. Just a lot of clever stuff you can do with selections if you think about adding them and filling them and inverting them. So anyway, I've got these points selected. I can go ahead and add in a simulate object, add hair. And you can see that I've now added on a, did I have the object selected? Grab that. Simulate. Let's go ahead and add a hair object. And we are now creating a single hair guide on every single one of those points. So I actually want to make sure that the actual hairs are on those points. So let's go ahead and into the hair, and I'm going to set the length down to 55, so a little shorter. And let's jump to our hair tab, and I'm going to tell this that the roots shouldn't be automatically blending hairs in between them. I want them to be exactly where my guides are. So roots are as guides. And then I'm going to jump to our editor, and I'm going to say, instead of showing us in the viewport these guidelines, I want to see our final hairs. I want to see all of them. So what's cool is if I click off of there, we are actually seeing the final hairs. If I were to grab this material here and turn on something like Frizz, you're actually going to see these update in the viewport to show you exactly what they're going to look like in the final animation. I actually don't want that, but now we can go ahead and hit play, and you can see that those will automatically be following along on the tree doing their whole animation. They look a little floppy right now, so we can make them stiffer by clicking on Hair, going to Dynamics, and going to Advanced, and saying set their custom dynamic springs down to 3. And now if I click off that, we should be able to see that these are going to be nice and smooth. So now they're going to be sticking out. Just have a little more control. No time to go into the specifics of this material, so I'm actually going to just steal this material and throw it out right on there. So we've kind of got the nice finalized version of that material. Let's go ahead and hit render real quick. And now you can see we've got those spores grown on there. Just added some thickness to it and some color on it. So I just want to talk a little bit about maybe the technique of making these float away. It was actually a somewhat tricky part, And Matthias gave me a heads up on a cool trick, and I just want to share it with you guys as the final step here. I'm going to go ahead and delete off all the animation because we're just worried about these kind of floating away at a particular spot. And even in my animation, you see how the trees kind of stopped and then those broke off. It just made it a lot easier to set that up. So those hairs are now on this shape. Now, I'm going to make these dynamic. Because I want this, imagine if you made a copy of the tree and you put the hairs on that copy of the tree, and I want them to float away, but there's no way of disconnecting them. So instead, why don't we just have the mesh float away? So to do that, I'm going to right-click, and we're going to add a simulation soft body tag. And on that soft body tag, we're just going to change a couple settings that we might not usually touch. One is going to be self-collisions. I don't care if it collides with itself. It can just pass right through. This also makes it calculate super fast. In addition to that, I'm going to go to the soft body, which it already is because it's a soft body tag. I'm just going to get rid of all the springs, so there's no structure to it. There's no shear, and there's no flexion. So those have now all gone away. And I just want to go ahead and create, I'm also going to copy this tag to the floor so it doesn't pass through the floor. And now I just need some sort of force. So I'm going to go and create a simulate, and we'll go with the old school particle forces. And I'm going to create a turbulence. So I got turbulence. I'm going to jump this up to something like 55. Let's give it a little bit of scale. And let's make sure that these dynamics are acknowledging it. So I'm going to go into forces. I'm going to say include only this turbulence. So cool. All we do is set up that soft body tag. We kind of broke all of its connections. And now I'm saying, and now look at this turbulence force. So let's go ahead and hit play. And you're going to see that the entire thing is just kind of falling and melting apart. Let's go ahead and turn off our gravity, Command D. And we'll jump over to dynamics, and we'll jump to gravity. No gravity. Cool. So now we're just dealing with it floating apart. Hit play. And now you can see every point is just floating away. It doesn't care about intersection. It's super fast to calculate. And the hairs, they don't refresh in the viewport, but in the render, they will be properly connected. So if we were to, and I guess we won't be seeing them, but if we were to hide the mesh, you can see that the hairs are just floating away with that mesh as it goes. And what's cool is we can use these particle forces to make all sorts of cool, weird motions float around. You see it's kind of very quickly floating around. But if I were to unhide that, and we grab our turbulence, and if we made it a much larger turbulence scale, then we should see a little bit more uniformity to these as they stretch around. If we were to maybe shrink that up a little bit, and we go into our dynamics tag, I can go and add in just a little bit of structure to it. Let's add in just a structure spring, a very weak strength of 10, and hit play. Now they do want to stick near each other just a little bit. So now you can see we're getting all this deforming, but they're still sticking together, and it doesn't care about intersection, so it's super quick, and it's just going to float around and look all crazy and weird. Another bit that's pretty fun, I guess it'll be the last thing here, is I'm going to turn off the turbulence, and let's get rid of that structure. And right now, if I hit play, I don't think anything will happen. They just kind of sit there. But if we go and grab our pressure, which normally inflates it, we can see, and it's very strong. So I'm going to do like a 0.1 on there. But now there's just a little bit of pressure on there, but there's nothing to slow it down. So this will actually start slowly expanding based off of its normal forever. So it's just a cool way of inflating that out. I wonder if you could do negative pressures. I'm not sure. Let's see if we can type in negative. Yes, we can. So the negative number will probably, yeah, it's going to suck it in and shrink it out. And actually, that could even be a cool technique. And I'm trying this right now. I shouldn't be doing this live, but that's kind of a cool way of like deflating your object a little bit. And I could go and delete off my dynamics tag from that. And that's now permanent. That's part of the mesh. And that could be what we continue from for the animation. So that's pretty cool as well. But I think that pretty much wraps up the entirety of what I want to talk about. We went and we modeled it up really quick. We sculpted it. We did very fast technique for getting good UVs. We baked it out. We got some joints in there. We rigged it. We did some texturing. But that should cover everything. Thanks, everybody. Be sure to visit grayscalegorilla.com. And I'm at Chris Schmidt 3D on like everything, on Twitter, on Instagram. So thanks so much, everybody.